prophet Nebnabala Musa Moron and the Beaker. The chosen one, the Messiah. He is the chosen one and the Messiah. He's the light and the way. The wisdom of our days. The healer, the preacher, the truth, the love. Bangati Togonunde. Listen up a second. What you're forced. Chosen one, the Messiah. Listen up a second. What you're forced. Listen up a second. What you're forced.
BOAUTAI, and welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show. My name is JODIE and I'm an initiate at the Earth Center. And I'm joined today by BOAUTAI.
BOAUTAI.
Right, so today we are going to be discussing mental health and depression. Before we do that, we just wanted to talk about this. First of all, acknowledge the divine world and the ancestors, and talk about the sidereal calendar. So we've entered the new month of Ateri, and according to our sidereal calendar, today is the 3rd of Ateri in the year 420. And the netter that governs this month is Serket. So Serket rules over the month of Ateri. And Serket is a scorpion goddess who watches over a dangerous twist in the path of the underworld. Her powers and protection can be used to heal venomous bites, and Serket is often accompanied Aisha in her wanderings. And sacred animals born for those in this month include the snake, scorpion, cow, vulture, catfish, rabbit, and the sacred dog. And one is forbidden to consume or kill these animals. So, our topic today is mental health and depression. Hattie, before we start that, is there anything that you've been interested in terms of news the last week?
Well, we are glad to see, hopefully, there's a change in American politics.
Yeah.
And we no longer will be having the lunatic running the asylum. Another type of lunatic will be running the asylum.
I mean, what interested me was a lot of UK coverage on it. When we kind of should be looking at other things. It's not necessarily our country, but they've been looking at that more into detail instead of what's actually been happening here.
They have a right to, because Britain is like the mother and America is the child. So don't be mistaken and think that they are separate. They are both the same bigoted, racially motivated. One do it covertly, one do it more openly. but it's no different. It's the same. Everything about America is Europe.
Yeah.
So therefore, we don't want to kid ourselves and think that America is better. Our Britain is better. Britain is only better at hiding it, but giving the impression that they are more a better society. So don't be mistaken that America or Britain, they're the same. There's no different. Same culture, same philosophy, same ideology, same racially motivated, same divide and conquer and rule. Both slave owners, that they are some of the architects of slavery and the exploitation of African people in terms of their land, their country, and also their people also. So people have this idea in this society that we are free and we can do everything that we like, but that is only an illusion.
And also, we've gone back down in the UK, rather, we've gone into lockdown number 2. Has anything changed for you in terms of the new rules that's been put in place?
Well, many years ago, I was taught that I don't have to worry about the laws of man. I'm worrying about the laws of the divine, my place and my part in nature, my place and my part in trying to fit in with the creation. So anything that a human being do, if you take it on, you're only gonna get confused and get lost in the mayhem, because it's pure mayhem that is going on. You just have to step out of it and say, whatever man do, they will come. And there's a surety in life that there is life and there is death. So no matter how powerful or strong or mighty or good or indifferent you are, one day you will die, and that is the reality. So don't get confused in this lockdown thing. It's just man trying to push a certain agenda. Men who have no true spiritual understanding about themselves, of who they are and what they're here to do, because if they did, they would look at life differently, and then we would not be going down this artificial road in terms of medicine, in terms of everything that we are looking at and doing. We are not doing things constructively to fit in with our ancestors, to fit in with the divine, to fit in with nature. We are not doing none of those things. The only things that we are doing is we are continually trying to see how much richer we can be, how much we can take out of the earth natural resources, and just stockpile it away. So at the end of the day, we are just being really stupid. In every other animal on the planet, when they gather anything, they gather food. So when there is no food, they have food. Human beings gather everything that is not food, what they think is precious to them, so they can exploit other people, so they can use other people and take their resources and then stockpile it in their vault or wherever they want to put it. But it's not about survival, it's about greed, and that's all it is.
And I think our topic today is quite apt, actually, because we are going to be discussing mental health, because actually since this whole period of lockdowns happened, there has definitely been a spike or percentage increase in the amount of people that's been depressed and suffering from mental health issues. But what I wanted to touch on before that was kind of having like a definition of what mental illness is. So according to society, or what we have been told, mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotions, thinking or behavior, or a combination of these. And mental illnesses are associated with distress and or problems functioning in social, work or family activities, and mental illness is very common. And according to the NHS England website, it tells us that depression, it doesn't actually tell you what depression is, but what it does, it tells you that there are feelings that are associated with depression. So it says depression affects people in different ways and can cause a variety of symptoms. They range from lasting feelings of unhappiness and hopelessness to losing interest in the things you used to enjoy and find, and you're also feeling very tearful. There can also be physical symptoms too, such as feeling constantly tired, sleeping badly, having no appetite, and various aches and pains. And the symptoms of depression range from mild to severe. At its mildest, you may feel presently low in spirits, where severe depression can make you feel suicidal, that life is no longer worth living. But it doesn't actually say what the root cause of that is. It just says there's societal issues associated with it. No?
So it can be a range of different issues, as they say. But one of the simple things I realized some years ago, a young man that I knew couldn't sleep at night. And he went to his doctor and he get some tablets from the doctor, some sleeping tablets.
Yeah.
And he was fortunate to read the side effects. And one of the side effects was depression, anxiety, suicidal. And the reason why he started taking these tablets, and within a week, he started feeling within himself, I need to kill myself.
Oh, wow.
I want to kill myself. I don't want to live. And then he had the wherewithal to look and said, but I'm not doing anything different. Why am I start feeling, I never have this feeling before in my life. Why am I feeling now that I want to kill myself? And when he read the package of the tablet,
The side effects.
the side effects actually suicidal. So sometimes some of the medication that people take can also bring some of the side effects also. Another person I knew had diabetes some time ago. Well, I think they still have it, but they had diabetes and they went to the doctor and the doctor put them on metformin. And metformin for some people is not an easy drug. And they couldn't stay in their house in the day. They just have to continue walking because it just makes them feel weird and funny. So he rang up his doctor and said to his doctor, you know, these tablets, they're not doing good to me. You know, they're making me feel terrible. The doctor said, I'm going to change you to this other tablet. Again, when he got this other tablet and read it, all the symptoms that he was exhibiting already, those were the symptoms that they tell you. So he phoned the doctor said, and he told the doctor, but these are the symptoms that they're saying I'm feeling already. He said, but that is the way I think you should go.
So you meant to basically
Right,
get worse on yourself.
So he just decided, you know, so I'm not going to take these things, you know. So we have to be very mindful about what we take sometimes and how we take them, because sometimes they don't do us any good. Now, also, we're talking about depression, you know, as it get into the period where we call darkness is coming out. And the winter month. One of the things that people don't understand is that just moving away from sun, absolute sun, having sunlight, cause depression. All the elements like fresh air, if you move away, and that's why with this pandemic, people moving and staying inside. That is the main problem, is the unableness to be into nature. That is going to cause depression straight away. You know, so you don't have to use science to realize that just the simple thing, understanding the importance of the sun, understanding the importance of the air that we breathe, fresh air outside, understanding the rain when it falls on us, all of those things, and you know, we get actual energy from all four elements. Again, people don't understand the four elements that we talk about are the four things that are enabled to go into the physical body without you asking for them. Your body taking water without you want to take water in. Your body taking sunlight whether you like it or not. Your body taking fresh air. You don't have to regulate and say, I need to get this amount of air. And the body, the sunlight, it give you heat. It also give you food, you know. So all those things, when you are deprived of them, straight away, you are in a state of depression. And compounding that situation even further, the fact by just having artificial light, the idea of being can't go outside, just staying in a room or in a place, that all those things is gonna make you depressed. And then we got more emotional depression things like going on, where things like abuse, physical, sexual abuse, relationship gone bad, relationship with your parents, all these things, work, being bullied, all these things can cause depression. And so it's a whole plethora of different things that can cause you as an individual not to be able to. And then also, one of the things that we find also is that life is about constant changes. If you're not able to adapt and change, then you're gonna get depressed really. And therefore, what happens with people who continually get depressed and all of that? They get locked into a situation or a certain time in their life where certain situations happen. And that situation just continue to replay over and over in their psyche, in their mind, and they can't get over it. And it's just like a record that is stuck and they can't move on. That in itself just bring a whole lot of negativeness with that person. So, it can be many things, but I will try and go into it in a spiritual way a bit later on.
Yeah, I mean, because I was going to touch on what you were saying about the side effects of like the medications and stuff like that. Because I knew somebody years ago. It's kind of when we went to like university, early 20s, that kind of thing. And when she kind of got there, she realized it wasn't really for her. She left and so on and so forth. And a few like social issues happened, like family, that sort of thing. And all she wanted to do was, like you said, of the person that you knew, just wanted to go to sleep. So she was advised to take these sleeping tablets, and then suddenly it kind of just spiraled into this depressive state. And I think like a lot of young people need to be more aware of the medications they're taking as well. But
not just medication. There's a phenomenon that a lot of students, and I know at least 5 or 6 people that actually start university, and straight away they just go straight into depression, right? And one girl is so sad because she managed to get herself better to a certain degree and finish her degree. And then from the time she finished her degree and come back home, she's now about just under 30 or probably 30, and she has she's still in a mental institution.
Oh wow!
Because she just can't move on, So there's so many different things, and when people have relationship also, and not able to accept that is finished, and need to move on, that can be a young person, that can be another problem. But one of the biggest problem with students is their feeling about what their parents' expectation of them are.
Yeah, I agree.
And sometimes it's not real, because most parents wouldn't want their children to kill themselves just to do good. You want them to do good, but you want them to do good in a way that is going to be beneficial to you and them in the long run. But some children just have it in the way, I can't fail. If I fail, my father, my mother is going to kill me, and they start evaluating, thinking, look how much time and energy and money they have put into me, and I am a failure. And sometimes these children are not even failure; they are A-class students, but they just have it within themselves that I am a failure.
Yeah, and you have to do that. And
it's the same thing like people who are slim and think they're fat. People are good looking, pretty, and they think they're ugly. There's so many different things that we as human beings, that actually we're seeing things from a different point of view, but not from the point of view of reality. Because the reality that we are seeing is like a mirror, the Snow White mirror that the witch is looking in. And just thinking that she's the prettiest thing in the world, you know, or the ugliest thing in the world in case of people who are suffering from all sorts of things. So, you know, we have to look in as a whole lot of different things that is causing all of these anxiety.
Yes. I mean, we're going to take a short break now, and then once we come back, we are going to look at what the tradition says depression is. BOAUTAI. You're listening to the Wisdom of the Nile show with JODIE and BOAUTAI today. And just in case you're just joining us, we are talking about mental health and depression. And just before the break, we discussed what society tells us depression and mental health is and its effects on people. And I'm going to be reading an article from the Firefly magazine about depression and the comedic perspective of depression also. So this article is taken from Rise and Firefly magazine, volume 50, and it can be purchased on the Earth Center, from the Earth Center rather. You can also have a look on the website for the prices of the magazines, and we also have an app where you can actually subscribe to the Rise and Firefly magazines also. So the article is called Depression: Alternative Treatments for Depression by Rachel Naba. Roughly 20% of the modern world would have it during their lifetime, and women are twice as likely to suffer from it than men. Some people say that suffering from it feels like a black curtain of despair coming down over their lives. The condition is depression, and it is often misunderstood and needlessly stigmatized. Depression is one of the most common psychological problems, and it affects everyone either through personal experience or through depression in a loved one. Depression can and often does interfere with normal daily functioning and often causes additional problems with family, work, and social interaction. Depression changes how a person thinks and feels. It affects social behavior and one's personal sense of well-being and contentment. It is a whole body illness that involves the body, mind, and emotions. It can affect anyone regardless of age, race, size, sex, temperament, or social status. Clinical depression is a very common problem. However, most people do not seek proper treatment. Additionally, most people who have experienced one episode of depression will most likely have another one. Some symptoms of depression include constant feelings of sadness, irritability or tension, decreased interest or pleasure in usual activities or hobbies, a change in appetite, weight loss or weight gain, difficulty sleeping, early morning awakening or sleeping too much, loss of energy, feeling tired despite lack of activity, feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness or guilt, restlessness or feeling slowed down, thoughts of suicide or death. Symptoms vary from person to person. Some people may experience changes in thinking, problems with decision making and concentration and memory. Pessimism, poor self-esteem, guilt and self-destructible thoughts are common. Changes in feelings are also common, and one may become irritable, apathetic, slow, helpless or hopeless or unmotivated. Behavior changes include social withdrawal, change in appetite, excessive crying, increase in complaining, temper outbursts, reduced sexual activity, and reduced household or work productivity. Physically, many experience sleep changes, chronic fatigue, and have aches and pains. The symptoms last for weeks, months, or even years if one is not treated. There are different types of depression according to the modern medical paradigm. A licensed professional is required to officially diagnose the condition. Depressive disorders include major depression, the most serious type of depression. People moderately to severely depressed fall within this category. Sometimes it appears from a single traumatic event in one's life, but other times it seems to develop slowly as a consequence of numerous personal disappointments and life issues. Dystemic disorder, low to moderate levels of depression that persist for at least 2 years. Symptoms are not as severe as a major depression, but are most resistant to treatment. Sometimes people with dystemic disorder will report that they do not remember feeling depressed. They are usually able to function, but the depression does not distress and interfere with life responsibilities. Unspecified depression. This includes people with a serious depression which does not fit into the major category, people with chronic, moderate depression, etc. If someone is depressed but does not fit into any of the other categories, this diagnosis is made. Adjustment disorder. Depression in response to a major life stressor or crisis. This is sometimes called reactive depression and is a last resort category. Only if the person does not fit into another category will this diagnosis be used. If symptoms last longer than 6 months, one would not fit into this category. Postpartum depression. Depression found in women after having a child. It usually starts out as the baby blues, which is commonly seen as a hormone fluctuation issue. Some women tend to experience this on a deeper level and thus are diagnosed as depressive. There is no single cause of depression. Regardless of the cause, physical changes in the brain can be seen and imbalances of chemicals are present. Some common factors in depression are family history, trauma and stress, financial problems, a breakup, death, life changes, a pessimistic personality, low self-esteem, medical conditions, and other psychological factors such as anxiety. The modern medical system treats depression with either medications, therapy, or a combination of both. It is said that those who are treated with medication respond to treatment better than when combined with psychotherapy. Cognitive psychotherapy is particularly effective in reducing depressive symptoms, and interpersonal psychotherapy is used to help the individual resolve relationship problems that are causing the depression. Prescriptions control symptoms but do not solve the fundamental problem. This means that medications are not a cure, but rather a coping device. Antidepressants are used for serious depression and anxiety. There are a number of different antidepressants. MAOIs were the most common medications used in the past, but now SSRIs are more common. SSRIs include fluoxetine, so Prozac, Luvox, Paxil, and Zoloft. So, according to traditional African initiations, depression is very deep and a very human issue. To understand depression, you have to understand one thing first, said Master Naba, traditional African healer and priest. The human being has a tendency of being confused by his environment, and this is a very fundamental principle. There is a discrepancy between what the human is aware of and what really exists. Because everything becomes and transforms, there is a spiritual conflict that is created in every human being because the rhythm of our becoming as humans is slower than the rhythm of the becoming of other things. Because of this difference, all humans are on a different wavelength, so to say, than other parts of existence. This leads to a basic confusion that is inherent in all human beings. Our first reaction to this is to make up things, and the human being holds on to this first perception of something. One only sees the thing the very first moment in which it comes across the thing. After that, one does not see the thing, but rather one's perceptions of it. Things transform too quickly for the human being to have time to adapt. One cannot catch up with one's becoming. So illusion is our favorite ground for thinking. There is a delay between what things are and how they appear to us. And when we make our rules and behavior based on our perceptions, we become lost and lose touch with reality, explains Master Nabal. Most people then tend to give up their search for reality, choosing to rely on illusion instead. The brain is not made to survive a world that is not based in nature and reality, so mental dysfunction occurs. Every human being is prone to depression, and when one finds oneself in this condition, one is literally headed towards self-destruction. Nature has one rule: whatever is not in harmony with the energy lines is seen as an obstacle, and that gets cut off from the Earth's energy channels. Human beings are our favorite subjects for this, said Master Naba. There are 3 levels of depression in the African healing system. The first level is found in literally every human being, and is seen as a person thinking that it is okay for certain things to happen to others, but not to oneself. One example is seeing a person crying because they've been called a name. The second level of depression happens when one can justify their feelings. For example, one may say, "I am crying because my car was stolen." The person's vision of self has expanded to include things that are not the self. The third level is when one has emotional outbursts without being able to identify why they are emotional. The traditional African healing system has herbs that will help depression. The herbs stop the deterioration of the brain that accompanies depression and allows the brain to regenerate itself. This allows the individual a new chance to decide to search for reality rather than be comfortable in their illusions. If the individual does not choose to take this path, he or she can easily fall back into depression. Preventing depression is possible. despite the fundamental setup a human being has for the condition. Through education, understanding of realities, and making clear choices, a human being can reduce his or her tendency for depression. A person has two options: to be destroyed or to survive. Clearly choosing to survive will determine one's attitude and will choose the way one adapts to life. Allowing oneself to adapt more easily will reduce the discrepancy between man and nature reality and will thus reduce the risk for depression, explained Master Naba. Other mental illnesses are just extensions of more severe depressions, and we can see people living in more vivid and strong illusions. Practicing non-attachment would also help, added Master Naba. It should be noted that the modern medical system's explanation for depression is only a theory, which they readily admit. Depression is more of a spiritual and coping problem and should be treated as such. Everyone is prone to the condition, and it is only one small decision that could push an individual into depression. Understanding that it is a human phenomenon that is not taboo to any human being will help one understand and prevent the condition. And the article again was from the Rise and Firefly, volume 50, and it's available from the Earth Center. Anthony.
I think Master Nava has put it quite good.
Yeah.
And I think it covered it better than I was saying in my opening there. But I think what I said had all the elements of what you were saying there also. And I just go into the spiritual aspect of it a little bit more. Because when you find yourself in a spiritual position where you don't know what is happening to you, whether it's just your time in space or something else is happening to you, and you are confused because phenomena start happening to you, you might start seeing things, feeling things, hearing things, and you can't differentiate whether it's illusion or whether it's something else. Is it something on the spiritual level or is it something on the physical level? I said in most cases is happening simultaneously on both levels or at the same time.
Yeah.
So you find sometimes people who have mental issue also have spiritual issue. And one of the phenomena where people say is that they see things, they hear things. Now, in the old days, one of the things that we always say to people is, please don't go and tell your doctor you're hearing things or seeing things. You know, because once you start saying those things, then they're going to look at you in a different light, you know, because, you know, we are so far removed from our spirituality that we don't understand that we have to see and hear things that is not of the physical world. And sometimes also you can get, whether through illusion or whatever, so as a human being you can get carried away by genies and other spiritual entity into realm that you are not supposed to go. And when you go there, either through hallucinogenic or any other kind of means, even marijuana can take you to places where you shouldn't be. And when you get there, what these genie do, they steal away your memory, and you are lost. And the only thing that you can do is continue to stay in that state by taking more hallucinogenic things. And then you become trapped in that reality, and you think that is the reality that you should be in. But in reality is substance abuse that is actually taking you into that world. Then there's also another phenomena. If you are born to be a spiritual person and you're not living the life the way that you should be living your spiritual life, then again you can be taken by entities and use your energy that you have to cause your life to be a misery. And in a way, it could be even ancestral. The fact that you are not doing what your ancestors want you to do, and they send you here for a reason and a purpose, and you're not really doing the things that you're supposed to do can be problematic to you as an individual too. So there, and the spiritual aspect, very, very few people that have mental issue. It is not that don't have a spiritual issue also. I would say everything is vibrating and the same frequency, and should be looked at in different way, because the way we perceive things is that we have shut ourselves off from our spirituality to the point that we don't want to accept the reality of spirituality, but we accept the reality of nothingness. And we get into a state now where the unreal is what we believe in and think is the real, and the real is something that we are running away from all the time. So we continually think is that, oh, and I hear people say that if I see a spirit, I would be the first person to run. But we are spiritual beings, so that means you're gonna run away from yourself. You know, we are meant to be able to connect with everything in the universe, include the living and include the seen and the unseen. And it's only when you are in harmony with everything that you can understand that everything can communicate. The stones, the trees, the sea, the rain, everything. There is a deity, there is a divine energy in all of these things. And because of this divine energy, it enables you to manifest at a certain level. So our perception is different. No two people have the same perception. And when your perception become, you start relying on illusion, or you start relying on thinking that this is the right way, this is the way I should go, and it might not be the true way for you, but because you start accepting this as the reality, then you throw your whole system out of balance. Because remember I said earlier on, one of the things about being a human being is your ability to adapt and change constantly. And we see nature do it every day. You can have all the different elements of the season in one day. As a human being, we have to adapt to all of those adaptations that nature throws at us. So therefore, within ourselves, we have the capability, we have the possibility. But again, because as human beings, we are so lazy, and we just like to stay where we are or do things in our own way, and don't realize if you don't adapt and if you don't change your attitude, your logic, your reasoning, if you're not trying to fit in with what is there already, then you're going to have mental problems and you're going to have mental issues. So, you know, the thing we have to remember is we must adhere and think of ourselves as a spiritual being in a physical body, manifesting in a physical body. And it's this manifestation that is causing the problem, because we are spiritual and everything vibrate on two frequency, the unseen and the seen at the same time. We as human beings get into this idea now that we only have to vibrate in the physical, right? And there is nothing, and society continually give us this reality that you shouldn't see things, you shouldn't hear things. If you're seeing things or hearing things, then something is wrong with you. Well, I can assure you, in the continent of America, there are many mad people then, if you want to look at it that way, because most people in Jamaica, where I'm from in the mountain, everybody see, everybody hear. Right? So we must be all mad. And I can assure you that it is better to have an understanding that your reality is based on nature, based on your becoming, based on your understanding or fitting in with what is around you. Instead of trying to create something, because when you try to create, the human being cannot create. The human being cannot invent. The human being is here to adapt, to change, to fit in, to apply what is already inside of you. It's not to change the wheel. You can't change the wheel. The wheel has been invented already. We have the 77 commandments. We have the different deities, different entities, different neteru. And all these things that we have at our disposal is enable us to adapt and change constantly. And if we are not able to do that, we get stuck in one reality or the other. And then we try and find an easy way out by drinking, smoking, whatever pleasure that we think as pleasure. But we know pleasure is a two-edged sword, because every time you have pleasure, it comes with pain.
But we have as an issue, we've got a good model. We've got a model to follow. We've got the 77. We have our spiritual activities. We've got the requirements of the chem, etc. But what about those people that are trying to be spiritual but don't have the particular model that we do, or the people that are, like we would say, spiritual panhandling and dabbling in different things but still fall into the trap of being in a loop of depression? What can they do to come out of that?
It is not an easy thing to do, because the first thing is that if you are sinking and you don't realize you're sinking, then you will sink. Right? But the only thing you have to do is realize, where I am in time and space. And if I am in this position now, then what that is telling me that, I have to see myself for what I am, who I am, what I do, how I do it, when I do it. All of those things is things that we have to look at. And it's only when we have self-realization, because that's the important thing that you have to remember. You can't fix nothing about yourself unless you realize that I'm in a hole. I realize I have a problem and I want it fixed. Then when you know that you have the problem, then you try and find the sources of where you can get the aid, where you can get the help, how you can get the help. Right? Because sometimes also things that come as help is just illusion also. Because sometimes if you don't have the right people to administer the right course of treatment, then you're gonna go in the wrong way. We understand in the Earth Center, in the Kemetic tradition, that there is no healing can take place on a human being unless it's on the physical and the non-physical aspect. And again, one of the important things also is using nature, right? So using natural things that the earth produce. What man produce is never cure. Is like a footballer on the pitch, and his knee is injured, and they put on that magic spray, and he run out and he play all right, but by the time the game is finished, he might be out for months because of that. So that is what modern medicine is doing. They're never looking for the cure or something. So and then there is so much, as far as I know, that is just trial. They're just trying things on people. They're using people as guinea pigs all the time to achieve their goal. It's not really helping the situation. It's just stopgap fillers that is filling in, that is going into just make things look good. And at the end of the day, the main problem is financial. Everybody have to make some money out of this. So when you're really ill, whether it's medical, mental, or whatever, the system, people in the system have to make money out of your illness. What a sad state of affair for a human being to think that when someone is at the lowest, they're fighting cancer, they're fighting all sorts of mental illness, and there are people in society, their goal, their whole aim, their whole intention, the whole attitude, the whole way of thinking is how much can we make out of this person? How much is our company going to benefit? How much for a Ferrari? How much houses we can have? How much we can waste giving our children so that we can make as much out of somebody who is dying, who is very ill, who have no where to turn, because you have stopped them from turning to the simplistic, natural healing world of herbs and natural things. Sometimes even a glass of water is better for you more than some of the things that you might get from the chemist.
You are listening to the Wisdom of the Nile show. We're going to take a short break, and after the break we're going to have a guest on who'll be talking about mental health.
Okay, Ujai, welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Ujai, just wanted you to introduce yourself, Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Emmanuel. I'm a professional mental health nurse. I've been working in the mental health industry now, I believe, probably going about 10 years. Qualified about 6. So I was a healthcare assistant to begin with when I was working within the mental health sector. Then I went to do my training, and I've been qualified about 6 years now, working various. I've worked in various different sort of places, different wards with different sort of clientele. So yeah, I mean, you can say I've kind of seen it all, really.
Yeah. In your experience, what proportion of Black people have issues with mental health in comparison to other ethnic groups?
I mean, I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I think in my experience, there's I would say the majority of the clientele that comes into our settings, the majority of them are actually Black people, Black men, Black women, in comparison to other ethnic backgrounds. I would say probably the reasons why potentially that might be would be because of different social factors such as homelessness, being jobless, not having family, and I think the most important one is probably stigma surrounding mental health, because what you would find is a lot of people, when they hear the word mental health, they don't want to seek help. And ultimately what you although we have a lot of Black people coming across the mental health system as well, there's a lot of Black people that are not actually coming forward. So potentially we can actually have more Black people with mental health issues in the community than we actually come across in our daily work. So like I said, I mean, it depends on where they're living. It might be people obviously living in deprived areas, for example, not having access to various daily essentials, for example, not having anywhere to stay, not having regular money coming in, family as well. I think family dynamics in regards to stigma, because I mean, in certain sort of backgrounds or cultures, it's like mental health is not allowed, you know. When you hear the word mental health, it's like they're just like, oh my God, no, God forbid, it's not the case, you know. And so you find a lot of people, because of that as well, they don't want to come forward because of the shame that they come across within the family dynamics, within the family setting as well. So
so in time, you said a lot of people, Black women and men, are coming forward with mental health issues at the moment, well, generally in your role. What are the main reoccurrences? Like, what are the main reasons? I know you mentioned like shame, things like that, for them not coming forward. What are the main reasons as to why they've said they've had a mental health issue?
As in why they have mental health issues,
or
why they don't
or
come
what's
forward?
the cause? Yeah, what's the cause, and then what's stopping them from coming forward?
I mean,
Aside
there
from
are
shame.
various things. When it comes to mental health, I think we've got two separate things. It's either organic, or it could potentially be as a thing of whether it's a substance misuse, or what we call a substance sort of psychosis and so forth, that is elevated because of the amount of potentially substance that they are using. So we call it substance misuse psychosis, for example. Ultimately, I think I'll start with like people that doesn't usually come forward is because of the fear of being judged, and I think that judgment, they don't want to be judged as having, or be titled, or be labeled as being a mental health patient or having mental health issues, for example. And like I said, because of the stigma as well, and I think the lack of the culturally sensitive treatment that people tend to get, which I've kind of touched on already. And the fact is, a lot of people don't have a way of accessing the mental health system in the first place, to be able to care for them because of the background that they obviously come from. So that's potentially a barrier as well for them. And I think, again, like I said, the shame. And because what it is when people are saying, oh, I'm going into hospital because I've got mental health, sometimes you tend to a lot of people will tend to withdraw themselves from you because they don't want to be attached to you because you've got mental health issues as well. It is a difficult one, and I think within the Black and ethnic minority group, we do have quite a lot of people within that sector that comes into mental health. It be because, again, they're jobless, they don't have a home, family sectors, losing jobs. They may have been working for all of their lives, and all of a sudden they've been let off from work all of a sudden. And again, that would usually sort of start creating some sense of anxiety and fear of not knowing what's going to happen next in their lives as well. So yeah, it can happen organically, and it could be various different stresses that potentially might make people develop mental health symptoms along the line. And what you would find is a lot of the clients that comes across our systems, a lot of them are what we call a drug-induced psychosis.
Yeah.
So throughout their lives, potentially they would have been taking various types of drugs for various reasons. Maybe it's to suppress whatever it is that they are feeling at the time. And obviously because they've probably got underlying sort of mental health issues, so that drug potentially will enhance that feeling that they're already sort of carrying in the first place, and then all of a sudden the psychosis will now sort of come along with it as well. So, and that would usually obviously be for various reasons, that there are obviously social factors as well. Friends that they're hanging around with might be influencing them in various different ways, and people are obviously turning to like robbery, stealing, and thinking that's the easiest way out, and obviously they'll go through a different pathway before they actually get into the mental health system as well.
Can you talk us through how, from assessment, how one I guess gets established as a person with a mental health issue, or that's in the mental health system then, I guess?
As in before they get into the mental health system?
Yeah. That was the process of that.
Yeah, the process usually, there's various ways of getting into the mental health system, to be really honest. It could potentially, I think, ultimately what you would find is some people actually do come forward themselves, or it could be because of family that would maybe take the individual to maybe a hospital to get them assessed because they are concerned in regards to the way they're presenting at home. Potentially some people will go to their GP, which then the GP will make a referral to like the mental health, professionals as well, and they're obviously there where they'll get assessed. So generally, it can come different ways. Like where I work at the moment, obviously in the sector that I work, I would usually obviously assess people. So generally, what we do is, if there are concerns in regards to somebody's mental health, what we would do generally is just to sit them down and try to explore exactly what the issue really is. So we have to start from the beginning. So what exactly is going on in their life? We try to identify what the stresses are, for example. If there's any sort of delusional ideations, we try to explore what the delusions are, because ultimately some people can't be able to differentiate what's reality to
what
fantasy, for example. So we try to explore that kind of factors as well. And again, we just basically try to have a generalized conversation with them, because what you don't want to do is, when you're doing an assessment with somebody, is asking them just a series of questions, because in that way they might not be able to tell you, they might not want to open up to you as though you're having a conversation like we are now. So if we're just having a general conversation, so ultimately, if you're obviously experienced enough, you would know what to look out for in terms of what they are saying, their body language, for example, their tone of voice, how they're dressed, their demeanor during the assessment. Are they fidgety, for example? Are they keeping eye contact, for example? What they are relating to during the process. And ultimately, you can then try to figure out, okay, does this person actually have any mental health problem? Or is it a case of like, is it sort of still brewing, but before it gets to a stage where it gets quite worse, can we actually handle this and try to explore it now rather than... So basically what we try to do is avoid hospital admission as much as possible. So we try to keep people in the community and get them support in the community first, before we start looking at hospital admissions, because what tends to happen is once you get into the hospital admissions system or process, it can potentially become a vicious cycle that
it's hard to get out.
It's like it's hard to get out for once you become quite comfortable in the environment, because you sort of see similar people just like yourself, or potentially when you do come out, the likelihood is you're bound to come back. So our main goal is to try to avoid hospital admission as much as possible, but there are moments and times when unfortunately we can't, and some people can't be managed in the community based on various risk factors, whether it is to themselves or to others generally. So
and just to touch on what you said about being a visual psych. I remember once or years ago I used to work in NHS, like a little bit of a stint, not very long, and I worked in like I think they used to call it like a halfway house, where you had people that were addicted to drugs and that kind of thing, and it was like a safe space for them basically. And I think I was there for about a month or two, maybe even short, I'm not sure, but what we would have is somebody would get released because they felt they were ready to go out into the world now after they've been at the halfway house for so long, and then you find out within a week they'll be back again. And it's like, how does that affect not necessarily the lifespan of the person, how does that coming in and out affect the well-being of that person, if the role of the mental health services is to make sure that person's well-being is 100%?
I mean, the thing is, I mean, when somebody is on a ward or in a service as an inpatient, ultimately it's like you can never be 100% to be ready to go out into the community, and generally what we do is get them to a stage where we feel that they can function in the community, but also is providing the support in the community, because we do have services in the community that can support that individual in the community. But what you would find is, after you've made all that necessary sort of thing, and you've put all that necessary things in place, ultimately some people, either the anxiety then builds up, the fear builds up again, and you know, they just get a panic attack and they don't really feel connected to the community because they've been inpatient for so long. Or another thing is, within that space of a week, what you'd find is some people will revert back to the old lifestyle. Because you just gave an example about like a drugs unit, for example. What you'd find is the first thing that they want to do when they go back out is go back to that old lifestyle, the drugs. You know, and that affects their mental health so quickly and there's many factors. It's either they're going to take drugs, they're not taking their medication, which is never a good thing, and they take so much drug, it affects their mental health, and then literally they're back within a week. Because it depends on what they're taking, how much they're taking, and if they're not engaging with the services that's been provided to them in the community, by the time you know it, they're back into the system again in hospital, and then ultimately then they'll be there potentially a lot longer than they were before. So it will definitely have a drastic effect on their mental state and their well-being, for sure, because what you find is, obviously, if you're not in the community, for example, in terms of physical health now, you're not getting enough sort of vitamin D, for example. So again, you're always stuck indoors, so potentially that can have an effect on your mental health. And you're obviously, because all the medication that you're taking in the hospital, potentially, again, they've got various side effects that can potentially affect your physical health as well. You know, and so for some people, it's like a wake-up call, you know. So it's like, oh my God, like I'm out now. So it's like they're out, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to do with themselves. They're like, where do I go from here? And they get so anxious, you know, and they don't know how to function again in the community, you know. So yeah, there's just so many various stress factors, but ultimately I think it's just getting people to try and engage with the services and the help that's provided for them. And that's basically what we try to do as much as we can.
I'm glad you mentioned about people not being able to go outside, you know, because we had the whole situation with the lockdown. I know there's been like a massive increase in mental people, in the amount of people that's come forward saying that they have mental health issues, and we know that's to do being stuck indoors, only being able to get 1 hour of exercise at a time, for example. In terms of that, how many, or do you have like a percentage of the amount of young people, or would you say rather it's more younger people that are coming forward now than older people with issues in mental health?
I think it's a mixture.
Yeah.
I think in the setting that I specifically work in, I can only say comment on that part is, I personally have seen an increase in older people.
Okay.
You know, and I'm talking people aged from like maybe 60, 70 and so forth, actually, you know, coming into the mental health services. But at the same time saying that, I think what you'd find is with younger people, in terms of coming in contact with the mental health system, again, it's that sense of freedom being taken away from them.
And the societal pressures as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, you know, the factor of not being able to go to school, seeing your friends, not having that sort of social contact,
normality,
you know, physical contact. Them, it takes a toll on anybody, but and more so with young people. We have definitely seen an increase in young people coming forward for various reasons. We've seen an increase in self-harming behaviors, for example, in younger people. That tends to happen in more younger people. We've seen an increase in domestic violence, but again, that's in older people. And the general sort of reason for this is simply because they're stuck indoors. The anxiety builds up, and people are feeling depressed at home, staying in the same confined space for X amount of time. Like you said, they're only getting 1 hour, exercise allowance.
I mean, it's unlimited now, isn't it?
It is now, you know.
Yeah,
but
by the time
before,
the last one,
yeah, you know, and again, people losing their jobs again, so that's another factor. Not knowing whether they will go back to work, you know, people being furloughed, people, you know, there's so many factors. So we have seen an increase in older people, but more so in younger people, simply because on the basis that they can't go out, see their friends, and do what they are used to doing on a day-to-day basis, really. So yeah.
And in terms of medication, because we spoke about medication earlier, I think I don't know if you listened to the show, we were speaking about a situation where I knew somebody, you know, at the time we were at university, and it was just this downward spiral, basically, of like, there was I can't sleep, I'm stressed about uni, and then go to my GP, I'm gonna get some tablets, etc. And then it was just clinical depression after that, really. Do you think that people are getting the right terms of type of medication for their issues, would you say?
I think nowadays I'll say yes. Things are getting a lot better, and I think previously, I think when it came to people, like you mentioned GPs, for example, we've always used to say that I think GP was quite quick to be able to prescribe medication and just let go on your way. Yeah. But I think there's a lot more awareness now, and a lot more education in regards to actually trying to try different sort of treatment, and I'm talking maybe therapy, for example, rather than medication, because ultimately not everybody requires medication and just need that natural, maybe it's just finding somebody to talk to on a daily basis. And generally you'll find that works with some people and that doesn't work with some people. So you will find some people where medication actually works better for them.
Yes.
And you will find some people that what we call talking therapy, or CBT, for example, or even DBT works better with some people. So in regards to like medication, are people getting the right medication? I think yes, I'll say that. And I think generally what we try to do when it comes to medication is give people a medication that's got the least side effects. And I think that's where the awareness and education is improved now when it comes to, most especially when it comes to GP. Because rather than going to a psychiatrist, for example, straight on, you can go to your GP who will do a thorough assessment, and they'll be able to refer you to the relevant services, whether it's therapy, whether it's a further psychiatric assessment, for example, and then they will take it from there. Whereas before, it could be a case of, oh, you're feeling depressed? Okay, here's a medication, take this, see how you feel. You know, without actually explaining to the patient, like, okay, this is what this does, this is take it for maybe this long and see how it goes, and we can review it. You never really used to have that back in the days, but now I feel like there's
more awareness, you're saying.
About, so I think there's more trust now in GPs. I mean, you know, being a professional, I never really had much trust in GPs in regards to the way they were so quick to give that medication, and I always used to criticize them for that. But I think nowadays it's definitely improved a lot better.
Can you touch a little bit on, you said about talking therapy, so like CBT, could you expand a little bit further about what that is?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, talking therapy is generally you have a therapist that you would potentially maybe meet once or twice every week,
Yeah.
and CBT basically it's a cognitive behavioral therapy. So they try to obviously look at the patterns of behavior in regards to what's making you do what you do and making you feel how you feel, and basically try to find ways of managing that in a different way. Like I said, rather than going through the medication route, they try to find different type of exercises to try and do to make sure that maybe to help you with your mental health or the symptoms potentially that you are feeling at the time. So that's generally, again, that could potentially be one or twice a week. And I think because of the I think the lack of services, I would say now in the mental health industry, I think is quite hard, and the waiting list is a lot longer than it used to be.
Oh wow.
Because obviously there are services being shut down, so the waiting list obviously goes up in regards to patients gain access to therapy and CBT, you know, and again, unfortunately, that's not up to us. That's what the government obviously are pushing for. But again, having said that, they've invested more money into mental health, where different areas of the mental health department has now opened, such as things like the crisis line, or even is sometimes known as the crisis line or the crisis hub. So generally what that means or enables people to do, if you're in any mental health crisis, whether you're at home or out on the road, generally it's like you call 111, you tell them to transfer you, that you're feeling unwell or you want to talk to somebody within the mental health department, and literally over the phone you can talk to a mental health professional just like myself, and that way they'll be able to support you over the phone. And that what enables them to do is do an assessment over the phone to see how you're feeling and how they can help you. And there's two ways to it. So generally it's either they will invite you to come in, so then you can have a face-to-face contact, face-to-face assessment, or potentially depending on how you are feeling at the time, they may say to you or get somebody to come out to you, do like a welfare check potentially, or ultimately they'll just give you an advice on the phone and maybe visit your GP the next following day if you're able to keep yourself safe. If it's like a night, maybe you're called in the night. If you're able to keep yourself safe overnight, then you can go to your GP. Then that way, then you can start the process from there. So there are various different ways. Even though there are services being cut in various sectors, there are also other services being opened as well, just to try and balance the scales a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're speaking about just depression, mental health, etc. But I also wanted to ask about like children's services, because I know those things got cut, because we do see an increase in the amount of younger people that are suffering from depression, even though they don't see as suffering from depression.
Yeah.
You know, are there any kind of services available for those people?
What, as in children that are not coming forward, or
yes, or children that families that have come forward to say that this child has an issue with mental health?
I think when it comes to children, I think in my experience, because I've actually worked with children before, I think I'm not saying they take mental health seriously as a whole, but I think when it comes to children, there is a lot of services out there, I think more for children than there is maybe when you got into adults, for example.
Okay.
There is quite a lot, but what you find with young people, which is what we tend to address them as young people, is a lot of the time you'll put certain things in place for them, but a lot of them don't engage.
Okay.
So I think then it comes across as though like there's not enough support out there for young people. I'm not saying all of them doesn't engage, but there are some that don't, generally just as much as adults as well. But what you find with young people is they just want to live their life, they want to live a normal life, but ultimately they are more likely to commit self-harm and potentially suicide, if not accidental suicide, more than potentially adults, because they're not able to regulate their emotions. They're not able to regulate their emotions as well as, let's say, if they were adults, for example, because they're still developing. They don't have as much understanding about life and about certain things as much as adults, or they don't see things as in the same light as adults. So ultimately what you find is, and obviously children, they influence each other, you know, to do either the wrong thing, ultimately the right thing, whether it's learned behavior for self-harming, for example, or being difficult at home, for example. So it is quite easy for young people to actually be seen in mental health services, because they take, I think, in my experience, we take that a lot, like very, very seriously. The young person now cries out for help. Trust me, because they're classified as the vulnerable lot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So where they're so vulnerable, we can put everything down now, and we have to go to that young person pretty much straight away. So when it comes to young people, we in the mental health services, we don't joke around.
Yeah. Do you think social media has a factor in the
100%.
the levels of mental illness in young children?
I think it does, and I mean, it was sort of on the news not too long ago, which is sort of one of the campaigns that they're fighting for in regards to what young people see on social media,
right,
and what they post on social media as well. Because what you find is generally a lot of young people look up to all these sort of celebrities with various, whether it's money,
and social
bodies,
media influencers as well.
So they look up to them and they want to be like them, so they start emulating them, but in the wrong way. And like I said earlier, because they're not able to regulate their emotions accordingly, they will potentially do the wrong things, and they're being influenced in the wrong way to do the wrong thing. So ultimately they get into the wrong thing, and potentially, because when they don't get to where they envision themselves to be, that will then start affecting their mood. They'll stop eating, for example, and when something starts affecting your mood, you start to eat less potentially. Your sleeping pattern is all over the place. You become quite erratic and emotional quite easily, and because you're not able to regulate all that emotions, what ultimately happens is one day you might just lash out, and then ultimately your parent will potentially, or your carer will take you to the hospital. They'll be thinking, hold on a minute, this is not the same person.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes that can then now be the start of some form of a mental health illness or problem.
Pattern, yeah.
That's a pattern that we generally we advise parents to look out for as well.
I mean,
yeah.
I know we spoke about, one of the things that we touched on earlier was about the reality versus illusion, and I think we can see that clearly with social media, for example, because influencers do give this illusion everything's all great, and again it influences young people to want to aspire to be like that.
Of course, yeah.
And are there, yes, because okay, let me start again. The question I wanted to ask is basically like, we understand that there are societal pressures for young people, especially living in the 21st century at the moment. It's rough. And are there issues you've dealt with directly or heard of with regard to mental illness as a result of bullying?
Yeah. Like I said, I've worked with young children before. I've had a situation where a young person actually attempted to take their life in school, for example, due to bullying and due to being stereotyped in school, for example. So ultimately what that young person decided to do is they couldn't take it anymore, they couldn't hack it, and they tried to use their school tie, for example, they went into the toilet and tried to obviously hang themselves. Luckily, one of their friends managed to find them and pull them down. But again, it caused some physical damage because they didn't have enough oxygen, obviously, going through to the body and to the brain. So they had to obviously go into hospital for such a while. When they obviously came round, we had to do a psych evaluation, and ultimately you tend to find out that. And I think ultimately it starts from school, and I think that's where we experience, in my experience anyway, we found that it stems from, people, obviously children in school, being bullied for one reason or the other, and then when they go home, they're just shutting themselves away from their family, and again, there's like a vicious cycle and a pattern because they don't want to speak, because again, children, they say they don't want to be a snitch, because they don't want to be a snitch, because if they snitch, then something again will happen to them, so it becomes a vicious cycle. But ultimately, what that is now doing to their mental health is deteriorating, And again, because they don't have that full understanding in regards to, you just need to come out and speak out in regards to how you're feeling, they just consume all that information within themselves. And again, ultimately, the detrimental effect or the detrimental factor is they just explode. And when children tend to explode, they tend to do the most erratic things, whether it's self-harming, trying to take their own life, or just that damaging stuff. And they always go to the extremes rather than it's a gradual thing. And I think that's the difference when it comes to young people. But yeah, the bullying definitely plays a part, just as much as things at home. So even though I said it starts at school, what you find is domestic issues going on at home, maybe between parents as well. Again, that's a contributing factor to children, because if they're seeing a lot of things going on at home between their parents and not being able to understand what's going on, it could potentially start filtering down to them. And then again, learned behavior. So they start thinking, okay, if my parents are doing this, and okay, that must be okay. So they start emulating that, and ultimately it's not right. So and it just obviously develops into something else as well.
I mean, going back to the social media influences for a second, because we do see, again, an increase in young women. I mean, I don't know if you listened to the show or not, but we touched a few weeks ago on that film on Netflix called Cuties. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
Where, they have...
I refuse to watch all of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Where you have the young girls in like scantily clad clothing and doing all sorts of stuff. And these are the images that our young people are seeing these days. Would you say that adolescent sexuality, does that have an impact on children's mental health as well? Because I watched the film, for research purposes, and it was kind of seen as though the young girl in the film, she was from African background. They just moved to a particular area, and she felt like she was left out. So she felt like she had to change herself into this tween twerking superstar to fit in with these other girls. And ultimately, they stopped being friends with her, etc. So that again had an effect on her mental health. But then, luckily, she was able to come out of that, according to the film, with the help of the family. So what I wanted to ask was, do you think that has an influence on young people as well, like watching those kind of videos, and this has been overly sexualized?
It is, and again, it goes back to people trying to emulate what they see, whether it is on social media or on TV. And as soon as they either get to there, and again, it's that feeling of acceptance, because a lot of young people, regardless of wherever they get to, they will never accept who they are for themselves, or they want to be accepted by something, and it's that feeling of acceptance or reassurance from somebody else. And once they don't get that, and the detrimental effect on that is it starts spiraling. And I think I mentioned it before in regards to the lack of sleeping, lack of eating, lack of socializing. They'll lock themselves up, and I just think like things like that in regards to that show is just dehumanizing, in my opinion. And I know they're all trying to tell a story and trying to be sort of create awareness.
Possible,
I understand that, but I just think they kind of took it a little bit too far, in my opinion. I think they could have done it in a different way, but ultimately I think without the support of the family, which is what we always encourage families to do, is try to be there for their young children as much as possible. I think without the help of the family, it potentially could have gone a different way, which generally there's a high rate of self-harming and suicide in young people, because of not the lack of knowledge and the lack of acceptance, and that and us not being aware of what's going on in our children's lives. And I've always said, like, the quicker we sort of clamp down on it, the quicker we can help them, because ultimately it's like you said earlier, it's the change of pattern. It's either they're not eating, they're not sleeping, there's just something different about them. And I think shows like that, although they're trying to deliver a message, I don't think they delivered it in the right way. I think they could have done it in a different way. But this is what we are living in now. I think girls definitely, whether it's for themselves or for other people, generally when young girls do that, it's not for themselves, it's for other people.
But we also see the same thing of young men, because we have this new genre of the drill music and things like that. That also affects young men into kind of thinking like,
you know, the songs they listen to, or like even emulating the what the song is asking them to do out there, or behaving in a particular way and particular thought patterns, or you know, like that is a mental health issue also, would you say?
Yeah, because what happens is a lot of the things that we see on TV are generally not what it seems to be. Because what I think a lot of young people don't understand is, although they're watching, let's say, all these music videos and seeing people with chains and cars and all of this kind of stuff, a lot of these people don't own it. It's all rented for the visuals and for the purpose of that music video. But what you'd find is they are creating some force in...
It's the illusion, isn't it, again?
Yeah, it's an illusion into young people's minds to think that this is the way of life when it really isn't, you know, because ultimately the young people will basically do whatever it takes to get to that position, and when they don't get there, the detrimental effect is start affecting their mental health. I mean, an example that I can give was there was a young person recently, a ex Manchester City football player. He was, I think, 17. He got released by Manchester City Academy, and because he couldn't regulate his emotions, he took his own life because he just felt unwanted. He felt unwanted, you know, because he didn't feel accepted. He wasn't good enough for something that he enjoyed really, you know, really much, and that's the risk that we face, because if children doesn't feel accepted in what they're trying to do or in certain environment, they will start deteriorating, and ultimately, like I said before, the first thing they start doing is either self-harming, or they will go to the extreme and take their own life. That's why I think we need to start having more sort of awareness when it comes to mental health in children, and in regards to how we can be there for them and help them to regulate their emotions a little bit better.
So, Emmanuel, I just wanted to ask you your final thoughts about mental health. I mean, how can one, from a societal point of view then, because you touched on the spiritual point of view here, how can a young person or an adult get support if they do have a mental health issue, or even before getting to that point, what can they do as a preempt to that, or recognizing that, hey, something's not right? How can I get out of this before it goes down into that cycle and you get trapped into the system, basically?
The mental health system, it's a difficult one, because I think ultimately it starts with the individual wanting that help to begin with, because if an individual doesn't want that help, it's really, really hard to help that person. And I think it's trying to identify your own sort of self-awareness. It's basically self-awareness, and recognize your own daily routines and patterns. And if you feel within yourself something is not right, maybe you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, those are signs of potential deterioration in your mental health. And if you're becoming quite erratic, quite more frequently, for example, you're getting more irritable, you know, stuff like that, those are signs. So when you now start identifying those signs and you're thinking about it from the early stages, generally what I would advise, again, is, because obviously the current circumstances, what we tend to advise nowadays is, the first step is, if you're in a crisis, call 111 and ask to speak to the crisis hub, for example. If you can't, call your GP, make an appointment, you know, go in and tell them this is how you're feeling, and get them to refer you to the regular, you know, services or external services. And I think we touched on medication before. What I would say is, if you're being asked to take medication, ask questions, because ultimately if you are going to take medications, you need to know what you are taking and ingesting into your body. Because a lot of the times, like I said, doctors will just say, okay, take this medication, but you don't know what it's for. Ask questions. What does this medication do? What are the side effects? How long do I need to take it for? What is it going to do to me? What are the long-term effects? What are the short-term effects? You know, all those kind of questions. And I just say as well, access the support. Maybe it's from family, friends, whoever it may be. You just need to be transparent. And because there's a lot of stigma in regards to mental health, the fact is we need to normalize this now. And there's a lot of awareness when it comes to mental health. We need to start normalizing it. And there's a saying that I always say is, if you can look after your physical health and take medication or any type of treatment for your physical health, why is it that you can't look after your mental health when they are both connected? Because if you're not mentally sane, you're not going to be able to function, and then ultimately that's also going to affect your physical health. So it's really, really important that we look after both. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, for calling into the show today. Thank you for all the points you raised.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care, yeah?
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, and that was our guest on the Wisdom of the Nile show. If you'd like to call in today, the phone number to do that on is 079 444 31366. We're just going to take a short break and listen again to some Voodoo on drums.
JODIE. Hello.
Hello.
JODIE. Hello.
Oh, we can hear you on the show. Sorry, your background noise, it sounds like it's a bit
Okay. I'll just turn it. Shall I just turn my volume down?
Yeah, I can't hear you. Yeah.
How's that?
Oh, you have to. I think you might have to turn the radio off.
Yeah, I've turned the radio off.
Okay. Well, JODIE, thank you for calling to the Wisdom of the Nile show.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yes.
And thank you very much. It was a really informative show.
Wow. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I just really wanted to say that was so many interesting points.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it was really so relevant, and I just wanted to, I suppose, just pick up on just one point of so many amazing comments that was made, and that was from the Hattani BOAUTAI, when he says that everyone that has a mental issue, it has a spiritual issue. There's a spiritual issue which is really connected, and that really resonated with me really, really powerfully, because I had, and you as well, JODIE, you talked about family issues, and we know that it's a very multi-dimensional. There's so many aspects to mental health.
Yeah.
What makes us depressed and what can affect our mental well-being. But I know, like, for me, I had a kind of like particular family issue that caused me quite a lot of distress in my 20s. I'm in my kind of like, coming up in my age now, but when I was in my 20s, I had quite a lot of family distress, and I went to counselling and so on. We go to try counselling and we talk about things, and actually really didn't make much of a difference at all, right? In fact, I'd come out of counselling, sometimes I'd feel much worse. But there was a situation where, by chance, I happened to be walking in some woods, so, again, like the power of nature, I was in nature, and I was talking to somebody else who had a similar issue that I had with a sort of a family, a breakdown in family relationship. And I just said, and I don't know what it was, I think it was being with the trees. And when Hattini actually said about the trees commune with us, the nature commune. So this was very old woods, actually. It was quite old woods on the outside of London. And the wind was blowing, and it was a very, very spiritual. It was a really lovely atmosphere in the woods. And I just suddenly said, I let go. I just said that. I just let go of the issue. And at that moment, I just felt this peace, it was really, really quite incredible. I felt like it was like an energy that just lifted, and it really did it left me. And interesting with that, I did genuinely let go. And about 2 months after, it was a breakdown in my relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
He became very unwell, and then I spent the next 6 months sort of like, in a way, really building back my relationship, and it was completely healed. It was really, and I think, like from what Hattini BOAUTAI says about the spiritual, there's a spiritual, often there's this kind of like spiritual block that is there I'm not saying in all cases, but it's definitely, there is something there to it, because I really absolutely experienced that. And I think I would I just really wanted to share that. And if anyone's listening out there, just to really, really in their, find a way that they can connect spiritually with that. What we learn in the Untam teachings is about the emotional control, and it's about accept. In a way, it's like not running from things. So in a funny kind of way, sometimes with emotional and mental distress, there is almost a running away from things. But sometimes what you have to do is accept that you're in pain.
Yeah.
And the acceptance is what kind of like is a process of freeing you.
I mean, Carol, I know you are an initiate in 7th Gen. And I wanted to ask you, because I think before initiation we all came with things. And, it may not be depression, but it may be to do with, in some ways we all have some kind of mental health issues.
Yes.
How has initiation supported your growth, like spiritually, and being in nature and letting go of the past, so that you're just more harmonious? How has initiation supported you, and would you I would definitely recommend, but I'm just asking in terms of that aspect.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I would kind of like, again, my path to initiation was very much, it was like we're all of us led to it. It's very much like a spiritual calling to come to initiation. And I think what happened with my father and so on, and that was also part of that calling as well, actually. So I think it was ancestral to lead me into the path. And one of the things that, Jodie, we hear a lot when they say, well, it's a spiritual path is an uphill journey.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it's, it's interesting because it's got both the sides of it. It is really, really challenging.
Yes.
But the challenge is what actually really helps to kind of lighten the load.
Yeah, and the challenge is also ourselves, Yeah,
the challenge is kind of like really to see yourself as you are, and to kind of like really face yourself. This is the thing which is so difficult, because in the society that we live, there's so many distractions, and there's so many ways that you can kind of like, blame other people. There's a lot of pointing the finger outside, oh, what is this person, what is this situation? It's not really me, right? So it's again, that's sort of like running away from. Whereas actually with initiation, you have got to really look at yourself. And what I found for me, one of the biggest things I found in initiation, with the struggle, which you have to have the struggle to really to develop your qualities, there's also this amazing aspect where you actually feel like spiritually you start to work through the trauma. So like for me, like if I take that one issue with the family and so on, and many of us in our communities, we have these issues with our families because we're carrying a lot of trauma. we're carrying this trauma from the Caribbean, from our motherland, through the migration experiences, through racism, through the trauma of like being just dislocated and not being in the Caribbean and being here in this place. So there's all these kind of different traumas. And I just feel that the initiation has really, really helped me to face these traumas one by one. Again, if I think back to the counselling, and if I think back, I never took medication. I was always just kind of like trying all the sort of like different counselling techniques and a bit of panhandling here, there and everywhere. And it never didn't touch it. But initiation is really, really doing, because it's ancestral. Because the ancestors want you to make the progress, because they actually want to come back.
Yes.
So they want you to clean up the act. So they want you to clean up the house so they can come back in and you know what I mean, and find a nice place. You know what I mean, because you've done the work. So I feel that with the initiation, this is a really big thing. All of that thing that we were, like I know within my family dynamic, and there's a lot in the Caribbean, you know, the colonial education is put one person against another. So you have a lot of jealousies, you have a lot of infighting, you know how it goes, you know. But with initiation, what we're saying, well, hang on, really, this is all of us. If I help myself, I'm helping my descendants, I'm helping my sister, I'm helping her children are going to help my descendants that are going to come through. We're all of us helping. Everyone, it's a win-win. So it just cuts all that out, and absolutely, just as my relationship with my father healed, so my relationship with my sister heals. But my relationship with my mother is deepening. You know, she's getting very up in age now. She's nearly 90. So so initiation is really helping me to really, really work on that relationship. Because as we know in initiation, the relationship with both mother and father, they're both very, very important in terms of the spiritual line, the destiny line, the bloodline. So I really feel that through initiation, I have a structure to my life. And I have children. And there is not enough attention, if at all, paid to really understanding
about the emotional control.
About our way our minds think, about the way we learn, understanding our brain, understanding how to kind of like balance ourselves, how we can use breathing, how we can use our bodies, how we can use exercise, the importance of food. They're very, actually, Jodie, I think you and Hattie BOAUTAI said, and your guests, it's small things. Small things about what we eat, taking exercise, getting out in the sunshine,
being in nature.
And emotional control. I'll give you one example that I saw of somebody really, really helping a young person with emotional control. And this was a young man I think it was in care, and I was there talking to the worker. And a young man came in and he just kicked the door, and he was just absolutely screaming about this happened and that happened, and he was in a really bad state. And the person who was working in the children's home sat there and very reflective, very much like what Master Naba, what we learn about emotional control, said, oh, so the washing machine wasn't working. Oh, so when you tried to put your clothes in the washing machine, you couldn't shut the door. So and then as he spoke, he just like calmed the young person down until eventually, he just said, so I think, what we might need to do is, and then they both together came to the solution, and everything was just kind of like sorted out, because he was mirroring to the young man about how to really deal with the situation. It's gone out of control. But if he had gone in there and said, how dare you come in here? If you'd shouted, and which would be a kind of like what we would say within this society, a normal response, you don't actually help the young person to actually understand how to really kind of exercise emotional control. So initiation is very much about learning that through the role models that we're presented. And it's one of the things when Patsy BOAUTAI talked about emotional control in the second or third class, and I went, what? That's impossible. Because we're quite fiery people, aren't we, Ken? People, we are very fiery, and we're very, very quick, maybe, you know what I mean, to get het up and to get into an argument, and that's seen as strength, whereas the other side is more like seen as weakness, like you're giving in. Whereas actually what we need to do is to kind of like train that actually this is not the weakness, at all.
I think for myself before initiation also, I used to think that strength was like not necessarily not standing up for yourself, but doing so in an aggressive way, or not taking any crap from anybody, and not necessarily being in someone's face. But we learn that strength is something different now. It's not always just about being defensive or telling people about themselves and that kind of thing. It's different. It's a calm strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and all of this helps with our mental health. Yeah. Because actually, when you do let off, you say, you know what I mean? It's a little bit like a sugar rush. You might feel good in that moment where you kick off, but everyone knows afterwards you don't feel good. You don't really feel good in yourself. You do kind of like, as well as kind of like mentally not feeling good, you also have all those hormones and those cortisols that you've kind of like, that have been created in your body. The heart rate has gone up. You've got all this carbon dioxide running around. It's not good for us.
Before you go, Carol, I just wanted to ask, was there anything you'd like to share with our listeners today, just generally about initiation or depression and mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I would just kind of like say to our listeners out here, just to, it's great that you're there and you're listening in, and I hope that you have really, found something in what has been said. You know what I mean? It may just be one thing that somebody has said that has really resonated with you. Depression is a real thing. Depression and mental illness is a killer. I've had a family member who committed suicide. And so this is definitely, it's a very, very serious topic. And I would just say, just to reiterate, always ask help. Always reach out to somebody, because in that moment when you may be feeling really, really depressed, at that point it can feel like there is no other way. But all I would say is just get out and move. And walk, and even just looking at the situation in a different way can just help you, just to kind of say, it is at that moment you can get stuck, but reach out, ask for help. If there is anything that you've heard, take that as a little seed. I suffered, and lots of people. I mean, sometimes I look back on myself and I can't imagine, I can't think, oh, was that really you, Carol? It was, but likewise, if you're feeling bad now, that does not have to be your reality. Things can, and they can change. And I would just really encourage, get involved, come along to some of our, if we have any events, or, you want to come and get involved, if you want to learn more about initiation, if you want to learn more about the spiritual aspects, then absolutely just to get in touch with us, go onto the website and have a look and see what our products are, our books, any events, and to just get involved.
Dua, Carol, for calling in.
You're welcome.
And Dua for the advice.
Yes.
And have a lovely day. Iri hiri.
Yeah, you too. Iri hiri.
Iri hiri. Okay, and that was one of our initiates, Carol, calling in.
Before we do go, we do want to give out some information about the school. So you can find us online, first of all, on Facebook at the Earth Centre UK. That is EARTHCENTER UK. Or the Manu School, which is in the United States. Their Facebook is also the Earth Centre, just THEEARTHCENTER. You can also find us on Instagram at the Earth Centre of UK, and centre is spelled CENTER. You can also find us on Instagram again, and the other page is Kebtah, that is spelled KEBTAH. And our websites, so we have the American website, which is theearthcenter.org. That's THEEARCENTER.org. And then we have the UK website is theearthcenteruk.com, and again, centre is spelled CENTER as well. And before we leave, we also want to give some information about our next Wisdom of the Nile lecture series, and that's going to take place online on November 28th, and it's going to be about generational trauma, and it will be hosted by Hatini BOAUTAI as well. And before we go, we'll also give the proverb of the day. And the proverb of the day is, no matter how loud the dog barks at the moon remains unchanged.
And my final word today is, when you see someone with mental illness, just reflect on yourself and the times that you feel sad, low, and happy. And think, what is it that stopped you from being like the other person? What is it that we find so stigmatized, are stigmatizing people because of something sometimes they have no control over? So every time you see somebody with a mental illness, just think, that could be me tomorrow.
Wow for listening to the Wisdom of the Nile show. And every hero.
Every hero.
This song goes in the memory of the beloved prophet Nebnabala Musa Morodinabig, the dog on praise, Mahir, the truth teller, Bisina Basa, which means I'll be appreciated after I'm gone. He's the man who overcome the devils with love. He's the man who speaks because he has something to say. The man of wisdom, the definition of humanity. Maheru, Maheru, Maheru. From far away, I'm from far away, far away, from far away, West Africa, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, Lamusa, far away, Morodinabig, far away, Prophet, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, Maher, from far away, from far away, Prophet, from far away. He's the man of wisdom. He's the man who lives by faith, and not by fear. His greatest wealth is the richness of his soul. He's the man who lives by faith and not by fear. He's the double-edged sword. He's the double-edged sword. He's the key to unlock the treachery. Follow truth and you shall find him. He's the definition of humanity. He's the beginning and the end. He's the prophet Naba. Far away, I'm from far away, far away, from far away, West Africa, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, Lamusa, far away, Morodinabig, far away, Prophet, from far are saying, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We gotta fulfill the boy. Come to Maheru, come to Maheru, come to Maheru, come to Maheru, come to Maheru. You got your own told story. I'm from far away, I'm from far away, far away, from far away. What's up, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, La Musa, far away, then the big.
Mark Wolf watched as the industry devised ever more cunning ways of putting water into chicken.
There are multi-needle injection machines which can actually double the size of a chicken breast